Good morning, students. Today we'll cover our first chapter from Indian Economic Development, and that is from Unit 6. This is the second book, Indian Economic Development, and the chapter is India's Economy on the Eve of Independence. So I have already requested you that you have to prepare a separate notebook for Indian Economic Development and separate notebook for macroeconomics. And we have covered so far one chapter from macroeconomics, and this is the first chapter from Indian Economic Development. Now we'll go through the introduction of this particular chapter. The purpose of British colonial rule in India was to reduce India to a raw material supplier for industries in Britain. This is the objective of Britishers, why they come to India and what was their objective. And in this particular chapter, we'll try to understand agriculture sector under colonial period, industrial sector, demographic conditions. Demography means the study of population. Occupational structure means what exactly the people, the workforce used to do during the colonial period, how they were engaged in different sectors. And lastly, we'll cover the infrastructure under colonial period. So these are the points which we'll cover under this chapter, that is agriculture sector under colonial period, industrial sector under colonial period, demographic conditions, occupational structure, infrastructure, all under colonial period. So now we will try to understand what was the focus of economic policies of colonial government in India, and it was protection and promotion of economic interests of Britain, then with the development of Indian economy. So they were, now we all know that they were more interested in the protection and promotion of their home country than, that is Britain, then with the development of Indian economy. So what was the impact of these policies? Now we know that their only policy was to protect their home country and their economy, then the Indian economy. So what was the impact? So impact was their policies is that they transform India into supplier of raw material. During the colonial period, during the British period, India became the supplier of raw material and we became the consumer of finished consumer products. So raw material, like we supplied cash crops like raw material like cotton, jute, indigo, and this will also cover in detail in the later half. So till this point of time you need to understand that their objective was, that impact on the Indian economy was that transformed India into supplier of raw material, and secondly we became the consumer of finished industrial products from Britain. So now we'll try to understand who all were the estimators of national income. Today, as we all know that, and we'll study in macroeconomics also, that we estimate national income. So during that British era, these Britishers they were never considered about the Indian economy, so they never even estimated our national income. National income, it is related with the production activity, so it is a indicator of growth. Every year Indian we can say economy is estimated by the central bank, and we try to understand our economy's progress. But during the British era they never estimated that national income, which is related with the output production. But some of the estimators were there, that like Dadabhai Naoroji, William Digbye, Findlay, Shriras, V.K.R.V. Rao, and some other estimators were also there, but it was V.K.R.V. Rao whose estimates were considered. R.C. Desai was there, but it was V.K.R.V. Rao whose estimates were considered significant in calculation of national income. So far we have understood about the British objectives. So we understood that their objective was just to make India exporter of raw material and importer of finished goods. Then we understood about the estimators. So now we'll try to understand agriculture sector under colonial rule. We'll study this particular concept, agriculture sector under colonial period. And the most important point in this particular concept is that India's economy under the British colonial rule was agrarian. Agrarian means 85% of India's population was dependent on agriculture, and though so much large part of the population was dependent on agriculture, but still India's agriculture was stagnant at that time. No growth. Stagnant means no growth during the colonial period. Agriculture productivity was low, and the next point is commercialization of agriculture during the colonial period happened. So we will study in detail what exactly that commercialization of agriculture is there. Now you understand that what was the state of agriculture under colonial rule. So most of the population was dependent, like 85% of the India's population was dependent on agriculture, but still the agriculture was facing stagnation, which means no growth was there during the colonial period. Agricultural productivity means the output was very low. But commercialization happened, and we will understand in the later slide what exactly commercialization of agriculture means during the colonial period. So now we'll understand what was the causes of stagnation in agriculture sector. And causes of stagnation means the growth was not there. So the causes were, firstly, for stagnation, firstly Jamidari system was there. Jamidar, they worked for Britishers, and they collected revenues. Their main interest was to collect revenues, and then they never developed agriculture sector. And secondly, low level of technology was used in the agriculture sector. Lack of irrigation facilities were there. Negligible use of fertilizers. Lack of investment in agriculture. There was no investment, no funds were available for the modernization of agriculture. So, and lastly, as small farmers, they were having no resources, and they were having no technology, and the incentives were also low. Means the profit was also not there with the small farmers. So this we now understand that the causes of stagnation means the agriculture, as in the earlier slide we were aware that now we are having understanding that 85% of the population under the colonial period was dependent on agriculture. Still there was no growth. Stagnation, the word is stagnation, and the stagnation means no growth was there in the agriculture. If there is so much of the population is there engaged in agriculture, there must be the growth. But during the colonial period there was no growth, and we found the reasons, the causes: Jamidari system, low level of technology, lack of irrigation facilities, negligible means low, very less use of fertilizers, and the lack of investment means funds was not there. Government was not giving funds to the farmers, and there was no resources available with the small farmers, and incentive was also low. Incentive here means profits was not there. Small farmers at that time, they were not given profits. They just have to work in fields as the tenants. Tenant means as on a rented property, they on a rented land they have to work, and for that there was no profit was given to them. So that was the state under the colonial period of agriculture. And in the next video class we will try to understand the commercialization of agriculture. Earlier, in the earlier slide we came to know that while studying about the state of agriculture under the colonial period, commercialization of agriculture. So in the next video we'll try to cover the concept of commercialization of agriculture, which refers to production of crops for market rather than for self-consumption. This particular concept will start from this concept in the next video, and which means the production of crops for market rather than for self-consumption. We'll discuss this from this particular slide in detail.